Okay, let's get going. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Environmental Sustainability and Funding webinar for sports clubs. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you're all busy people, so just finding a bit of time in your busy schedule is much appreciated. My name is Adrian Ledbury from the Heart Sport and Physical Activity Partnership, HSP, and we have supported Richard Funding for Sport to help to design tonight's workshop and to host it and to promote it. So that's been our role, and it covers two really important topics, doesn't it? In terms of finding funding, and in this case, linking to environmental sustainability, which is obviously a really high priority. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully through the course of this hour, you will find out a little bit more about what's going on, what the impacts are, and importantly, some potential sources of funding. We've got a number of different organisations today, mainly sports clubs from all around the country, which is great, and also a number of organisations who support sports clubs to do their thing. So you're all very welcome. We also have the benefit of Richard Sutcliffe from Funding for Sport, who's going to be leading this workshop. Here at HSP, we've been working with Richard for a long time, and he's a real expert and specialist around securing funding for different organisations across different funding streams, and has latterly developed his knowledge around environmental sustainability. So really looking forward to hearing from Richard tonight. Just a bit around housekeeping. If you're able to, if you could keep your mics off for the time being while we do the presentation. But if you've got questions or comments or observations or things that you've done in in your venues, in your settings, please share them on the chat. We want to make this really interactive. Obviously, Richard's got an expertise, but you'll have your expertise and your knowledge and experience as well. So we want to share that and make it really interactive. We will be pausing from time to time, and I'll be trying to manage the questions, and there might be an opportunity to come off the mic and ask the questions as well. That said, we've only got an hour, so but we'll have to keep it to time as well. We are recording the session, and we'll be sending the recording and the slides out afterwards. So that'll be coming your way in the next couple of days. Great. Okay, so hopefully that's a little introduction, and it sets the scene. And I'm going to hand over to Richard. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. So, yeah, just a nice introduction of what we're going to be covering in the workshop tonight. First of all, just going to have a brief look about what environmental sustainability is and how that impacts on sport. And then what we'll move on to is looking at ideas of what sports clubs can do to be more environmentally sustainable. I think it's always useful that clubs and organisations can see some good case studies and examples from other sports clubs that have received funding to improve their facilities whilst incorporating environmental sustainability into their planning and development. And finally, we're going to really focus on some funding streams that might support environmental sustainability for your sports club or organisation. So, to start with, what is environmental sustainability and what is the impact on sport? Well, if we go by the definition, environmental sustainability is the responsibility to conserve natural resources and to protect the global ecosystem to support health and well-being, not just now, but in the future. So what does that actually mean and who actually cares? I love watching sport, I love playing sport, I love coaching sport. But when eventually climate impacts on sport enough to affect me, I might not be around any longer. So why do I care? You know, when all's said and done, I didn't create this problem. it's not my problem. The truth is, I do care, and we do want to make a difference. I think the fact that so many people are on here this evening proves that you also care, even if your reasons are just that you're interested in finding out what funding's out there to support environmental sustainability, or you're just inquisitive to learn more about the subject. But as much as a lot of people want to turn a blind eye, we can't ignore the fact that climate is affecting our sports clubs and the sports club, the sports that we're involved in, and the activities that we do from day to day. It's not just affecting them in the future; it's affecting them now, but more importantly, it's going to significantly affect them in the future. So, we need to do something about it.
You'd have to conclude, well, there is something happening. There is something changing.
You can already see it happening. It's not something that's about to happen. It's happening now.
8 major weather events in the last 15 years with catastrophic flooding.
I think there's still some reluctance to actually talk about it.
It's the planet we live on. There's no better cause to fight for.
You've got to decide whether you want the sport or not.
50 degrees temperatures might be commonplace in places like Australia. You're not going to play cricket in that. Is our sport actually going to be able to be played in 20, 30 years?
Images of a world in crisis. A planet whose very future is under threat due to the actions of man. And cricket seems to be heading into the front line of the battle to stop that threat. Now, you may think that...
From 2007 onwards, we've had 8 major weather events over that period, and drought in 2012 as well. So we had flood and drought in 2012. We had our biggest flood in 2015, 2016, that was Storm Desmond. We finished up spending £3.5 million working with clubs to try and bring them back. One of those clubs spent more than 2 years away from their home.
You look at the science, actually, by 2030, that we're actually in a lot of trouble with the planet. You only have to look at the number of kind of bushfires, floods, storms, things like that are going on. If we don't address it soon, it's really going to be an issue.
That our connection with climate change is one that we need to be addressing at every level.
Anyone with a voice, whether that's an athlete or anyone else, I think has really got to stand up to this issue and raise as much awareness as possible. And
carbon footprint, every business, every sport. First thing to do is understand the size of it and what it actually looks like from a percentage of your business. We're still very much a volunteer-based sport, and so this might feel like just another thing that you're adding on top of everything else that clubs and volunteers need to wrestle with. But I'd pivot that and say that actually this isn't one more thing. This is everything. And every piece of your operation to keep a club going. So whether that's your refrigeration or whether it's your lights or whether it's, the insulation of your buildings, the fuel you put in your machinery.
One blue sky thinker can see a change on the field that in water precious times could save gallons.
Watering the grounds is always an issue. You use a lot of water. I would not be surprised at some stage to see an artificial cricket outfield at some time. Why not? It works for football. I could see you having grass pitches and an AstroTurf outfield at some stage. That would be quite helpful in many ways because you get so much more use out of the ground. But those are the sorts of things we've got to look at.
So for cricket, the battle against the threat of climate change has started. It won't be won today or even tomorrow, but what is clear is that if everybody in the game who either watches or plays does their bit in some way, it's a battle that can be won. It has to be.
Now, obviously, that very much focused on cricket, and I'll apologise for my editing there, but if you want to watch that in full, then the link is on there. It's a very, very insightful YouTube video done by Sky Sports. And also, I've just put on there some other useful little insights. There's an actual sort of forecast for 2015 and how that's going to affect our sports going forwards, as well as some new material that Sport England's put together through Bundle. But what is clear, whatever sport we're involved in, is that we are seeing more cancellations due to extreme weather conditions, whether that be flooding and waterlogged pitches due to heavy rain, whether that's high temperatures making it unsafe to play, or droughts that affect our water sports, cold leading to cancellation of frozen pitches, or storms and high winds damaging our facilities and our equipment. But it's not just our outdoor sports, it's also our indoor sports. You know, the high cost of fossil fuel energy sources, making the cost of utilities unaffordable, the increases that we're seeing in venue hire, and the knock-on effects that we're after putting on our subscriptions and memberships, or just literally the increase in costs to play sports, you know, and it's going to come a point where people are going to have to make a tough decision, especially when you've got small amounts of disposable income, about whether you can afford to play badminton or racquetball. And these are the challenges that we face. And it's not just challenges for those types of things, it's also challenges for events and races and tournaments that we put on. We've got to start thinking about our energy use, the waste we create from those, the transport logistics from getting to and from places and holding the events in the first place, the materials and signage we use, the food and drink that we serve, how we look after the water, and the impact that those events and tournaments and races, etc., have on sort of our habitat and biodiversity. So these are the things that we've got to start thinking about. But we need to start moving away from the doom and gloom and start looking about how we address it. And last year, there was an environmental sustainability consultation with key figures there, Sport England, Sport Scotland, Sport Wales, for example. And what was really interesting from that is some of the findings. And in particular, if you look on the right side, that 58% said that energy consumption is a key environmental challenge, irrespective of that, whether you own your own facility or not. And also that 55% of organisations see that the lack of funding is one of the greatest barriers to acting on environmental sustainability. So I think, I don't know, but I think because of these are areas of focus, and then challenges that we face, that over the next coming years, this is where funders are going to start looking to invest and put money into when it comes to environmental sustainability. Up until now, a lot of the funding out there, and this is not just sports funding, this is just general funding connected to environmental sustainability, has been about raising the awareness. But we're slowly starting to see a shift where funders are now starting to tackle some of these things. So looking at travel and how we reduce carbon emissions when we're traveling to and from places where sport and physical activity takes place, looking at our buildings and how we can reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions from the buildings. Circular economy, so how are we reducing consumption and waste associated with kit, equipment, and just our general operations. Water quality usage, how we manage our water costs and manage flooding and drought on outdoor pitches and our green spaces. And then finally, adapting to climate change and those extreme weather events so that we can actually maintain the sector's ability to participate in sport and physical activity, not just now, but in the future. So, has anyone got any questions before I move on? No? Okay. So, what we're going to look at now is just some ideas of what sports clubs can do to be more environmentally sustainable. Obviously, there's certain things out there that clubs and organisations might need funding for, but there are some simple things we can do now with little or no cost. So we can start making simple energy savings. Okay, and I'm just gonna stick to the sort of bold parts of these, but there are just simple things we can do, just like touching down our heating a notch, adding thermostats to radiators and draft proofing, moving to energy efficient lighting, for example. We can make our facilities more energy efficient, whether that's installing solar panels or having more modern boilers put in, thinking about how we're travelling a greenway. So can we walk to places, cycle or catch public transport? Sometimes that's not going to be feasible. But if not, if we are going to have to travel to places, can we share lifts so we're not driving solo? Reducing our plastic waste. A lot of the time, we as clubs may sell bottled water in plastic. People might come with plastic bottles, but if we can actually have a system in place where we're encouraging people to refill their own water and having something in place where they can do that is all going to help. Making sports grounds more eco-friendly, whether that's through the fertilizers and pesticides that we use, or whether that's looking at other things such as harvesting rainwater or composting grass clippings. All these small things make a big difference. Letting nature thrive. So if you have got an outdoor space where you can let the grass grow, do that and let the sort of wild habitat, survive. Switch your club's current account to an ethical bank. Switch to green energy suppliers. Think about your generator use or recycle and reuse. There's lots of ways, especially where we're faced in society where not everybody can afford the kit for everything, where maybe we can pass that on to others or recycle it in some shape or form. Have recycling bins on site so we can get people recycling waste. And there's lots of support out there where people can help you. And I've just bullet pointed 3 there that can support sports in helping to recycle and reuse. Now, as we move on to funding, the key for us really is moving towards things that are low cost, high benefit. And I'm going to go through now a few of those things that actually you can get funding for that, will make a low cost in terms of the funding that you can go for, but the high benefit. So installing energy saving devices and controls, insulating your hot water system and fixing leaks, insulating your loft or roof space, draft proofing, replacing existing appliances with energy efficient new models, insulating walls and floors, installing new windows and doors, replacing your old boiler with a more efficient one, installing an air source heat pump, and installing solar panels. So there's just sort of 10 there that will all get funding through some of the funding sources that I'm going to show you later on. And as always, as we move forward, the support mechanisms that we have through sport are starting to develop resources that are offering good hints, tips, and guidance. So I've just listed some there. Obviously, the clip I showed you earlier on came linked to the ECB. There's a lot of really, really good material that is transferable across all sports that they've got that will help you to make your club more environmentally sustainable. The football LTA have the same, and obviously Sport England and Heart Sports Partnership have also got really good, useful links on their website to support you with making positive changes within the club. Anyone got any other questions before I move on to sort of case studies? Okay, so what we're going to look at now is I think it's always really, really useful when you can see what other clubs have done and how they've received funding to improve their facilities whilst incorporating environmental sustainability into their planning and development. I think what I'm finding at the moment, and again, hopefully this will change as we move forward, is that funders are funding things that you would go for normally as a club, but are asking clubs and organisations to also back that up by how what they are going to purchase is going to be more environmentally sustainable. Hopefully, going forwards, they will actually fund things for the very purpose of environmental sustainability. But at the moment, it's almost something that they're just asking clubs and organisations to show how they've thought about that, and they put that into the planning and development of what they've done. So an example here is from Combridge Cricket Club, and as you'll see, the building on the right is because they were getting regularly flooded. They've now designed a new social pavilion, which is built above sea level, flood level. So when they do flood, it's less at risk than it previously was. An example here on the left of Cardiff Cricket Club, who've added new cladding and doors, windows that they've installed. So they've made the building more insulated so they can reduce their energy consumption and also save money through their operating costs. The club on the right, Addington, they've installed rainwater harvesting. So they collect rainwater from the roofs of the building on site and then they store it in a tank underground. Obviously, this probably might not be applicable to every club, but sometimes clubs are near to woodland. And so Fillingley Cricket Club, they basically partnered with the local wildlife trust and have been doing a lot of work to encourage biodiversity on their site. Again, just the little things that you can do. Obviously, sometimes when it becomes to bigger builds, right from the start, Keswick Football Club, they ensured that when they put their new building in place, that they installed a nice energy supply and included underfloor heating as part of from a ground source heat pump. Here at Parish Council, when they did their new build, they put a number of things in place. So they included a ground source heat pump, which provided hot water and underfloor heating. They installed solar panels, and they supplemented this with a hot water system with well insulated roofing. So again, there's lots of different things that you can do. And then there's just the very basic things that we can do as a club. If you're running a big cricket evening and you've got several teams down, or football or other sports where you've got a number of teams down there, if you've got a system in place where people can just bring the water bottles and fill them up, then that saves them from using plastic bottles. And this is just an example of St Mary's RFU, that they installed solar panels and battery storage, and they reckon that that's going to take them 4 years to pay back from their installation, and that over 25 years that will save them 360,000. So it also shows how much these things can save the club. And I appreciate some clubs are bigger and smaller than others, but it just shows you, the difference that these things can make. Bury Tennis Club, they've moved theirs to LED lighting to minimise light pollution and to save money. So lots of different things going on there. Now, one of the organisations that's been at the forefront, and hopefully, don't know, but hopefully Sport England may follow suit, is Sport Wales. They announced nearly £1 million of funding from their energy saving grant that's been used to improve energy efficiency. And I'm not going to go through these. I'm just going to leave these on screen as examples. But it just shows you kind of some of the things that we were talking about before. They were giving grants out up to 25,000 specifically for environmental sustainability. And these are just some of the different sports and different projects that they've been able to get funded through that scheme. Some going all the way up to the 25,000 mark, some very, just little bits like 2,500 or so, just to improve. And like I say, I hope going forward that we will see more of this across England. So I'm gonna spend the bulk of the next part now really talking about funding streams. So you really can see some of the things that are out there. Before I do, have we got any questions that anybody wants to ask?
If you have got a question, you can use the reactions button at the bottom to raise your hand, and then I'll I'll know who you are. Otherwise, if you can just take yourself off mute, go for it. Any questions? Very good, Richard.
Okay. Right. Okay. So let's start having a look at some of the funding streams that are out there that we can look at. And again, some of these funding streams are not specifically for environmental sustainability, but they can pay for items that are environmentally sustainable. So I think the first one to mention, this is kind of a fund that's out there that's supporting clubs that have faced flood damage of facilities. Now, Sport England will open this up at various times of the year when there are incidents of extreme bad weather. And they'll accept applications from organisations, for example, at the moment that were affected by recent storms and flooding. And they will specify on there in particular areas where they will support, where they're aware of where there's been issues. However, my advice there would always be to sort of contact Sport England, because sometimes flooding can be quite isolated. And so, if you have been affected by that, then this is a good fund. It's part of their small grant scheme, and that funds up to 15,000. Because their key is obviously they want clubs to be able to get back delivering sport and physical activity as soon as they can. And my advice would be, it might be that your club's not being affected now, and hopefully it won't be in the future. But if it is, that's the link that will take you to the website to find out more information about that. Now, the next fund I'm going to talk about is the National Lotteries Award for All. That funds between 300 and 20,000. It's got a really good turnaround, 8 to 10 weeks. And the Awards for All has been running for years, and there's no deadline, and there's no reason why Awards for All will not continue. So it's a really kind of good fund to look at. The key thing with the fund, because it's a community fund, is demonstrating how you hit one of their priorities. When I talk to all sports clubs, I will always say, sports clubs bringing people together and building strong relationships in across communities. That's what we do. People come to clubs, they meet people, they may go off and play the sport, outside of the training sessions. A lot of people become friends for life. Some people stay friends, at that club for years and years and years. Sport is that in a nutshell. So for me, you've already hit that priority, full stop. But in particular, if we're looking to put in some of the things that we've discussed earlier, then you are improving the places and spaces that matter to communities by doing that. If you are installing a new boiler system, yes, you're putting one that's more efficient, but you're also creating a place where, certainly in the winter, it's going to be much warmer, much more welcoming for the community to come and use. If you are putting a new kitchen in and you are getting new appliances, then you are putting something in place there, that's going to encourage more groups to come and use the facility, more people from the community. So in particular, if you are looking at some of the things that we've talked about that will improve environmental sustainability, you will certainly be hitting those two priorities, and you only have to hit one. It might be as part of what you're wanting to do. It might enable more people to fulfill their potential or address issues at the earliest possible stage. And you might also be helping people, your community, or the organisation face some of the demands and challenges that a lot of sports clubs are currently facing because of the cost of living. So there's no reason why your club and organisation shouldn't hit one of those funding priorities. And here's an example of some of the things that I've worked with clubs before to get funding for through Awards for All, which also hit the agenda of environmental sustainability. So new roofs and insulation, windows and doors, installing new kitchen and replacing appliances that are more energy efficient, new water systems, and improving elements within the building, whether that's electricity, plumbing, lighting, etc. So those things are typical things that I get asked from clubs all the time that are wanting to improve their facilities. Where can they go for funding? And Awards for All is one of them. And it's quite a light touch application compared to other applications, which can be quite complex. So certainly a good one to go for. It's also important just to know the things that they won't fund. So they won't fund routine repairs and maintenance, day-to-day running costs. They won't fund solar panels, which obviously has come up several times during the slide. They won't fund solar panels, but there are other organisations that will. The key with this grant is you focus on what the benefits are of the things about bringing the community together rather than the main purpose, increasing people's participation in sport. So it's important just to know that. Focus on the beneficiaries and the impact it will have on them rather than the sport itself. And if you wanted to find out more about that, you can go onto their website and they have a really good sort of advice line, or you can email them to sort of ask them questions if you've got a project in mind. So another really, really good one. And when I talked earlier about funders now starting to ask more questions, well, LANFL has always focused on community and environment, but certainly I've noticed over the sort of last 18 months, more of their questions are asking you about, how you are environmentally, how you as a club are sort of environmentally friendly, how your projects will be more environmentally sustainable, how your club deals with biodiversity. So they're starting to put more of those types of questions in the application. And the main five landfill funders are the FCC Community Action Fund, BIFA, Valencia Community Fund, Veolia, and SUS. I know there's a lot of clubs obviously on here from Hertfordshire. You tend to find in Hertfordshire the main two are BIFA and Veolia. And just to explain a little bit more about it, it's that landfill funding is based on a tax credit scheme that gives back to improving places and spaces, facilities within a certain radius of a landfill site. That tends to be 5 to 10 miles. And the link on the previous slide is where you find out about that, and also has you put in your postcode and it will tell you whether you actually are in a landfill area to apply for funding or not. It is capital funding and capital funding only, and they do vary. So it ranges from anything from 10,000 to 75,000 in terms of the amount that you can apply to. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it's the same type of thing that they will fund, but obviously on a bigger scale. Because obviously, as a club and organisation, if you are making, if you're building an extension or if you are improving some of the key spaces inside it, 20,000 might not be enough. But the good thing about Awards for All and Landfill is that you can apply to both. As long as you're not asking the funder to fund the same items, you can ask them to fund the same project as long as the items are different. And you can, if you're lucky enough to have a few landfill funders in your area, again, as long as you're not asking them to fund the same items, you can go to 2 landfill funders for the same project. So the next scheme I'm going to talk about is the VCSE Energy Efficiency Scheme. So this is a scheme just over 25 million to help voluntary and community organisations in England improve energy efficiency. So the first part of the scheme focuses on the cost and delivery of an independent energy assessment. And at the moment, applications are open until August 2024. The second part of the scheme, it actually focuses on the installation of energy efficient measures, which obviously is linked to an energy assessment if you've already had one, or the energy assessment that they will do for you. Now, although the recent round closed at the end of February, there are two more rounds that will open up, one in April and one in July. So again, if you keep your eye on that, you'll be able to find more. And at the bottom of this slide here, there's the link to where you can find more information about that. And why it's an ideal kind of fund for sports clubs, because it's going to help you with funding towards building installation enhancements, space and water heating measures, lighting upgrades, and renewable energy measures. So, really kind of something that, I think will be really useful to a lot of sports clubs and organisations. The other thing you can consider is planning game monies. People might know this as Section 106 or Community Infrastructure Levy, also known as CIL. And this is all about funding outdoor sport and play areas using Section 106 housing development contributions. So if, for example, there has been a big housing development near your ground or facility, and there has been a loss of green space, that money is likely to be held as a capital receipt. In a lot of cases, that land might have belonged to the council. If there is a loss of green space, then that money needs to go back into the community. And I'm talking a bit on simple terms here. It's a bit more complex than that. But based on the value and the size of the land that's been built on will be dependent on how much funding is available. And I've known this vary from sites that have released as little as sort of 20, 30,000 to sites that have led to sort of 1 million, 2 million. So it's very varying in terms of what's available. And you find out about that by contacting your council planning department. You can sometimes get passed from pillar to post, but stick with it. You will eventually get round to the right people, because, like I said, sometimes there can be some decent monies there for clubs to improve their facilities. And then just touching on a few, I know for some people this might feel a bit cricket heavy with some of the things I've shown, but if I'm honest, they're the ones that are kind of driving change at the minute and need to. But they have a county grants fund, and one of the priorities as part of that is tackling climate change. So this covers areas such as flood resilience, drought resilience, energy saving, water management, and they will also contribute towards things such as electric mowers and rollers. But they have put a maximum grant of 20% of costs only towards that. Clubs can apply between £1,000 and £10,000, and you can find more about that fund on the ECB website. But also there's some really good funding guidance on there as well. The Football Foundation, they have an energy support scheme that opened early sort of last year. It is currently closed. There's two funds. They are currently closed, which is the Energy Fund and the Floodlight Fund. But because this is such a topical area, again, I don't know, but I expect that at some point this will open up at a later date, and so it might be useful if you kind of get aware of what their funds fund when they do reopen. For those that are familiar with the Football Foundation, they do have a sort of a grant scheme up to 25,000, and floodlighting, for example, is part of that. And so is improving buildings. So even though it's not part of the specific fund, their sort of grants up to 25,000 would fund a lot of the things that we've already talked about earlier about improving facilities. Just moving a minute away from funding itself, a lot of funders are sort of having an element of moving towards crowdfunding and contributing towards crowdfunding initiatives. At the moment, Sport England have an Active Together fund, and what that does, it matches funds up to 50%, up to a maximum match of 10,000. The idea is that it's helping community sports and physical activity organisations fund sports projects, again, mainly capital. What's really good about that, it's run by a crowdfunder who offer loads of expert advice and guidance, and all crowdfunding campaigns are on the website. So if you are wanting ideas of what you can do, there's plenty of examples from other clubs and organisations. So you can find a club that's doing something similar to what you want to do, or a sport that's the same sport as yours, and you can almost replicate what they've done and just make it specific for your club. And as well as that, they offer a one-to-one coaching, support, and advice and guidance and webinars to support you along the way to pull your crowdfunding page together. How it works. So if your application is approved, then you get match funding up to 50%, again, towards a maximum of a 10,000 match. To receive a pledge, so it's Sport England that put in the pledge, you kind of need to do two things. So one is they will only show their hands when you've got 25% towards your target. And also they will tell you that a minimum number of supporters that you want. Sometimes get clubs come to me and say, oh, brilliant, we've got a crowdfunding page of 10,000. Oh, well, we already have a sponsor who gives us 10,000. So we've already hit our target and we're going to get the match that goes with it. They will specify the minimum number of supporters, because as the word crowdfunding suggests, it's about getting the crowds donated into your page. But you can use subscriptions and memberships and sponsorships into your crowdfunding page. If you are a sport that is very seasonal and you get all your memberships at a certain time of year, so without going back to cricket again, this would be an ideal time for cricket. The season's nearly upon us and people are starting to be asked to pay their subscription and membership fees, and the clubs are starting to find their sponsors. Well, that can all go into your crowdfunding page. And they do one thing that Sport England do like, they do like innovative ideas alongside those kind of go-to sponsorship and membership fees. And an example of that is my cricket club, for example. We're sponsored by a brewery. So what our sponsor did is we went to them and they donated 10 kegs of beer to us. And normally those kegs of beer would be £50. So we put them on our crowdfunding page for £40. The brewery were happy because they felt they were giving good to the cricket club. The person that bought the kegs of beer were happy because they got it for £40 instead of 50. And obviously us as a club received all those £40, so £400 into our crowdfunding page. So they do like different things, and you could do that with, people connected to your club who might have certain businesses. We've had people that have worked with florists, butchers, even people that, the local community might do a pantomime. We've donated X amount of tickets for free, so people can sell them as long at their club. So there's lots of different ways you can look and approach that. And then also just some other smaller funds that you could maybe look at. Aviva run a crowdfunding page. You've also got things like the Co-op Local Community Fund. On average, you're probably over the course of that, probably be able to draw down 5,500 through that. Asda Foundation, Persimmon Homes, Tesco Community Grants, as well as looking at other platforms, fundraising platforms, which sometimes might act towards contribution to the grants that you're applying for, as funders do like it if you're putting something in yourself. So you've got things that you're probably familiar with, but Give to Local, Easy Fundraising, Just Giving, as well as things like Snap Sponsorship. So just about ourselves really, in terms of what we do and how we can support clubs and organisations. We kind of have a few main areas that we try and support people with. So we offer free funding, help and advice, and we can do that in many ways. We can do it one-to-one over the phone, or we can do it, if there's a number of people on your committee that want to be involved, We can do it as a group through Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where you can bring your project ideas to us and I can identify what might be the best funding sources, how much you're likely to get. Is a funder going to prioritize that over another project? If you've got several ideas, which ones you might go to for which. We also look over bids for free. So if you've got people within your club that you think, well, we can do this ourselves, but we'd really appreciate somebody casting their eye over our application, maybe suggest some changes, some things you can add, some things you might need to take out. We can do that. We do offer a bid writing service, but we do that on a no win, no fee. And we've also got our website, and we try and keep that as up to date as we can with new funding sources or funding information that sports clubs and organisations might find useful. So, if you've got any questions and you don't want to raise them today, get in contact with me. We can arrange a call, or we can just exchange emails, and we'll try and help you as much as we can. It is a growing area. It is quite new to me, but it's quite exciting. And hopefully, by making those changes, we'll have a positive impact on sport as the climate and things change. I'm just going to hand you back over now to Adrian, who's just going to explain a little bit more about the bid writing service for those that are in Hertfordshire.
Richard, and we'll come back to Richard if you've got questions. But just to finish off, for those sports clubs who are based in Hertfordshire, we've got this free one-to-one bid writing service for projects that improve environmental sustainability, and that's live at the moment. So when I send the slides out, you'll be able to get access to the link, and then it'll provide you more details. We are partnering with Richard and Funding for Sport and helping those organisations who've got projects that are linked to sustainability to help them to find the funds and also to put in the bids. So that's really exciting. We've got a number of projects in the pipeline at the moment, but we're still open if there's anybody out on the call who is interested in that. As I said, when you get the slides, click on that link or get in touch with me directly and I can send you the link. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. Richard's also mentioned that it's an area it's a real priority for us. We've developed some resources on our website as well. So a lot of the things that Richard's mentioned are on there as well. So case studies, events, training, things like that. So hopefully you find that useful as well. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that one. And back to you, Richard. We've picked up a few questions, but if you want to just finish off first.
Yeah, so if anybody does want to get in touch, there's my details there. By all means, drop me an email, and we can arrange a time to chat. But hopefully you found that useful. I do hope that, over the next sort of 12 to 18 months, we are seeing more specific funding for environmental sustainability, because I really like what they've done at Sport Wales and how they've supported clubs there. And hopefully there'll be initiatives that come support clubs across England. But obviously, as things do evolve, Hot Sports Partnership and ourselves will be updating our websites with all information that will keep you up to date with anything new that comes out in relation to that. So yeah, it's just a case now of just open to questions. If anybody's got any questions, and I might not be able to answer them all because it is new to me, but if I can, I'll do my best to answer them.
Great stuff. Thanks, Richard. So I've just allowed people to unmute themselves. But as I said, if you have got a question, use the reactions tab at the bottom and just raise your hand, and then I'll try and manage that. But we've got a few that have come up through
I've
the
just
chat.
seen one in the chat. I'll try and answer this one from Alison. Really frustrates me, that one. You phone the National Lottery and they said that they don't fund sport organisations or clubs. I write at least 2 bids a week for sport organisations and clubs, and trust me, they do fund them. I'm not sure why they say that. I think I think they say it because they think you're doing it for sporting purposes. And I suppose you are, but you have to flip that on its head and go back to the priorities I talked about before, is that by doing what you're also doing, sport does so many other things depending on who your target group is. You know, it improves discipline, it improves teamwork, it improves people's confidence and self-esteem. And if we're improved, if we really stick to this agenda, you know, we come across a lot of sports clubs that have facilities that accommodate a lot of other people. They run functions that bring the community closer together. They hire the building out for community groups. And when they have things like kitchens have got to the point that they're beyond the state of repair, or you've got a boiler system that's broken down, many a times we will go to the lottery and we will get funding for that. Um, I do get a lot of clubs that say to me, I phoned them and they say they don't fund sports clubs. I can only hopefully try and reassure you that, half of most of the work that we do with Heart Sports Partnerships are supporting clubs to apply to Sport England and Awards for All, and the majority of those clubs are successful. So yeah, they do, and I'm more than happy to have a chat with you, Alison, at any point in relation to that. If you want to tell me more about your project and everything, and how you might be able to get funding for your project, even if it's not related to this agenda.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. The other one that was on the chat was around the VCSE fund, and the point was being made, is it only for frontline services?
The honest answer is I don't know. It's a very, very new fund for me. And so I'm being honest with you, I don't know. But that is something that I can take forward, um, and we can post out, or I can contact the person that raised that and get the answer to. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the exact answer. So I can't answer that now, but it's certainly something I can take away and find out for you.
Okay, thank you. If you get an answer in the next couple of days, Richard, then I can include it when I send out the slides. And just to say that, yeah, the links in the slides will be live, so that'll be fine. There's a question with regards to the ECB funding and the Football Foundation funding, and
Yeah.
just to check that they're for cricket and football respectively.
Yes. So yeah, the ECB County Grants Fund is for cricket only. Um, to my knowledge, the Football Foundation one is specifically for sports clubs. That sometimes the Football Foundation, if you're a tenant on a site, they will also fund you. Um, when it comes to bigger things, they do have more of a multi-sport approach. But under these funds, to my knowledge, they're specifically just for sports, those sports.
Okay. So a question from Peter. Is there help for LED floodlights for energy reduction and reduce light spoilage?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an eligible area, then those landfill grants that we talked about, we've just not in Hertfordshire, but we've done one in the West Midlands that's been successful specifically for a tennis club that are looking to get rid of their old lighting and put in new LED lighting, and that's been successful. So it's certainly something that landfill funders will fund. Potentially, it's something that Awards for All will fund. We haven't wrote a bid to them yet for that, but it's certainly something that we're going to give a go and try and see if they do. It's not that they don't fund it; it's just whether they deem it a low priority compared to other projects.
Okay. And then when you talk about funding, are these loans or donations that don't need to be paid back?
Yeah, so with grants, you don't need to pay them back. So if you get the funding, you've got the funding. And the same goes for crowdfunding. It's not a loan. Some governing bodies do have loan systems that you can, and obviously they need to pay back. But the things that we've talked about today are grants, and they are, if you get the funding, that's funding solely for your project, and you don't have to pay it back.
Great stuff, thank you. Just a note to John Swanwick, very, very nice of you to share that information on renewable energy options appraisal. If you're able to send that through to me, John, I can put that out with the slides and the recording as well, and then everybody gets the benefit of that. I appreciate it's specific to you, but as you said, it might be that others could benefit just in general terms. So that would be great if you could do that. Right, we're coming to the end of the session. Any further questions on the chat, or anybody want to unmute themselves and ask a question in person? No? Okay. So yeah, that's fantastic. Really appreciate that, Richard. So some really insightful points, but both in terms of things that we can do as sports clubs to save energy and obviously to reduce our carbon footprint. Some things, just some good tools and tips and some ideas, some things that are quite low cost, but also then going into quite a bit of detail about things that could be funded and various funding streams that are out there. So yeah, that was great, and really appreciate your time on that and knowledge and expertise. So thank you very much. Thank you everybody for participating, for coming along and asking your questions. As I said, we will share the slides and the recording and the other bits and bobs that we've mentioned in the next couple of days. Richard's already said that if you've got any follow-ups or queries, please go through to him, and likewise to me at the Heart Sport and Physical Activity Partnership. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that and found it really useful, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.